I did a recent video on the mini chuck SC1, SC2 from Record Power, and they're perfect for turning many of the small kinds of things that I turn. If you turn small things occasionally, you can appreciate the challenges of turning small things on a standard sized chuck with standard sized jaws. And one thing we know, that if you can't hold it on a lathe, you can't turn it. So today I want to go into a little more detail on the accessory jaws and faceplate ring, and also share some of the tips and tricks that I found in using this SC1, SC2. Let's get started. These are the pin jaws. They fit interchangeably on both the SC1 and the SC2, as do all the accessory jaws that are designed for both of those. It's got a dovetail, so you can use it on smaller bowls where you're going to use that dovetail recess. I would say they might be suitable for bowls up to maybe 8 inches or so. They don't project out too far. Another thing that they're useful for with that dovetail fitting is the face plate that matches that dovetail, which is very nice as a very secure way of fastening a bowl for initial or a small hollow form for initial turning, because it fits in very well, locks into place, and it just can't come off. Another thing that it's great for with this particular size is if you've got projects with this size, and I forgot the exact measurement, but it looks like it's somewhere around about an inch and a half. An example of that might be pepper mills that have a large hole for one of the chucking operations. That's something that this would be useful for. If you are reverse turning some boxes, for example, with a box that has long parallel walls, instead of using a jam chuck, you could use this, and you're less likely to break it because you're going to have pressure along more wood, and you can just snug it up and finish off the bottom of that box, whether it's an acorn box or a regular box. So that's another great way to use this. One of the other things that I like to use these sets of jaws for is if you're turning a lot of the same kinds of smaller projects. Let's say you're turning a perch for a small birdhouse ornament. You know, it'll hold squares where you've got the corner in between the gaps of the chuck. And after you turn one off, you just pull it out and turn another one and another one and another one, as long as that will fit in between, go through your headstock up to about 3/8 of an inch. That works just fine. Not only square stock, but also a dowel, appropriate size dowel. You can do the same thing. So this is very handy on any number of different projects. You just turn and go to town. Okay, here's the SC1 chuck with the dome jaws. The SC1 with a longer body, although it has decreased capacity going this way, the smaller body does allow it to extend out and have more room to maneuver behind, and extends out a little bit longer from the headstock if you want to get behind something. Now, these dome jaws are perfect for very small, precise work, because it allows you to get in very, very close without worrying about, about the tool getting caught up in the jaws. Here's an example of something. If you turn, for example, little perches for miniature birdhouses. Typically, these are no more than about a 1/16 of an inch thick, maybe a little bit longer or a little bit wider. And then maybe you might want a little bit of a knob on the end. Now the convex jaws allow for turning the smallest work without really damaging the stock because it doesn't have any sharp edges. You do want to make sure that you've got a fairly long piece in there to take advantage of these longer jaws for the really firm grip to keep the vibration or anything down. But this just does a marvelous job on really fine work like this. Another aspect of these jaws, it does allow you, for example, if you're turning purchase part one off, pull the stock forward, do the next one, and you can have this, depending on the size of your work, actually go on up into the headstock. These pin jaws are perfect for drilling pin blanks, and they're much more accurate than drilling on a drill press, which I never like to drill pin blanks on a drill press anyway. It gives a very strong grip, and as shown here, you've got a capacity of a blank just a little bit more than 1¼ inches on the SC2, a little bit smaller on the SC1. And you can see that although the jaws are smaller than the longer jaws that come with the larger SC4 chuck, you've got a similar functionality in holding a blank firmly. What I like to use these for are to drill out on fan and lamp pulls, and this will hold the largest size that I would use. One thing I think Record Power could have improved on is this little Allen wrench that's used for the set screw to tighten the insert on the SC1 and the jaws on both of them. It comes with both of them. And that's to have used a different inexpensive Allen wrench that had a little wing on it, like these ones that I've got several of them for carbide fasteners that have this little plastic wing that could have only cost pennies. It would have made it a lot easier to use. So what I did to improve it is I used some of this 2-part epoxy from Woodturner's Wonders and just crafted a little wing handle and let it dry. It dries hard in a couple of hours, and now I've got essentially the same thing that they could have added for pennies. The manuals that came with mine, one for each, identical manual that covers both chucks, were dated 2020. This chuck has been out for about 3 years, 2 or 3 years, and it didn't contain any instructions, just safety information in German, German, English, and French. No Spanish like we usually see in the U.S. Be aware that the latest manual is dated, I think, 2022, and you can get it. You can download it easily from their website if you happen to get a chuck that comes from older stock, because you do want to have the instructions that come with it that go into details about the different optional jaws and how to mount it, and what are the capacities of the different jaws and other information. Seems like almost all chucks get stuck on the spindle every now and then, but with the SC1 it's easily removed if you have the wrench, because the wrench uses these threaded adapters with holes to adapt to that wrench. Now, it's also just probably easier to use the handle, because this chuck has extremely thick sidewalls that much more robust than I was expecting. So you seat that all the way down in there, and you're not going to have any trouble just popping it loose. Let me show you a couple of tips on the woodworm screw that comes with each of these. One little tip: you're going to mark the flat with the red felt tip pen. It makes it a little easier to line this up, because the flats need to be oriented toward the center, toward the screw on the jaws, in order to get it seated. And you're gonna center it where the jaws go right in the go inside the slot. One tip or not one tip, but one set of instructions they don't tell you in the manual is you need to pull this forward before you tighten it up, because as you screw the piece of work on there, it's going to pull this forward, and if you have it pushed back, it's going to break loose on you. I showed in an earlier video dealing with larger chucks the importance of making an accessory donut ring that's just proud of the top of your jaws, because it gives you much more secure surface anytime you're using the woodworm screw. So let me show you how we do that. Make one of these accessory donuts for this smaller woodworm screw on the SC1 or the SC2. So I take our SC1 chuck with a woodworm screw mounted, and I'm going to put on a threaded glue block. I drilled a 1/4 inch hole to fit that woodworm screw. I faced it off already. I'm going to use a little turner's tape to mount the block of hardwood we're going to use for a collar. And I'm just going to clip this with a pair of scissors, and we're going to put two strips. One's probably enough. This stuff is just amazingly strong. Okay. Now we're going to take the block of wood we're going to use, and I've already flattened one side, or basically sanded it off. The other side is not even, and we want to make it 7/16 of an inch thick. Now, since we got the center mark, I could have turned this round on a bandsaw, but I tell you what, this goes so fast it's not worth the effort to nip the corners even. So we're just going to press that down. We're going to give that just a couple of minutes to set up. If you do it right away, it doesn't have the same holding strength. Well, let's just give it a few minutes. Since this is cross-grain work with this board, I'm going to use a bowl gouge, and we're just going to come in from the side and round it off. If you do it from this end, you're going to get a lot of tear out. We're going to come in from this end. I can see the shadow line, so I can see where it's got to come away. And now we'll finish it. Okay, and now let me get a rough idea of where 7/16 of an inch is. Okay. For the pull cut. Alright, now all we gotta do is get in the middle. Just like removing a tenon off a bowl. If we get it flat, putting a ruler on it, pretty doggone close. That with a set of vernier calipers. Since this is exactly the right dimension we've got right here, let's just go ahead and do that. Touch it up while it's turning on this side, not the other side. Okay, now we've got it. Now all we got to do is come in there with a scraper and open that up all the way through. On this glue block, I rounded over the edge, knowing that I need to get a blade in here to just work this loose. And there we go. And we'll just take this off. And there's our collar. It's just proud of the jaws, so the wood is going to have this larger bearing, wider and wider this way, and thicker bearing surface to give it friction to make it a little stronger hold. Using the woodworm screw on the SC1 that comes with the SC1 or the SC2 is a great way to mount a flat blank, such as a small bowl. The first bowl blank. First thing you got to do though is you've got to prepare the blank. So let's talk about that briefly. Larger chucks tend to have a larger woodworm screw that obviously needs a larger hole, something typically 5/16 to 3/8 of an inch. But for this one, the smaller woodworm screw only needs a 1/4 inch hole. So, you know, basically you're going to mark centers, drill it down 3/4 of an inch, because that's how, or possibly on some work smaller. I always like to keep a piece of paraffin candle handy. It makes it a little easier to thread the block on. Now, you can use it just like this and screw it on, but again, that faceplate ring makes it a lot easier. And that increased friction surface from that wooden donut actually also allows you to be able to get away with a smaller drilled hole. For example, if you're doing a dish in something, you can't drill 3/4 of an inch deep, so you can just use a spacer and you can get by with a 1/2 inch without any problem, you know, depending on the spacer you use. Okay, so that said, you just put it on there, twist it on, and you're ready to go. And the woodworm screw makes a very, very strong hole for an awful lot of projects with flat wood, such as this square blank I can make a square bowl out of, or a round bowl. I really like these little guys, both for their precision and their versatility with these accessory jaws. If you've had any experience with them, feel free to leave them in the show notes below in your comments. And if you're in the market for one, feel free to check out the link to the Woodturning store in the description area. Full disclosure, I'm an affiliate marketing, so if you purchase anything through that link, I will get a small commission. And remember, y'all stay safe. Come on back, you hear?